welcome to Let's Examine Addiction Honestly podcast. My name is Charles, and today we will be talking about my addiction and experience with alcohol over the last essentially 35 years. As always, please understand that I'm not a trained professional and do not use this podcast as an alternative to proven medical methods such as AA, NA, therapy, rehab, and etc. I can vividly remember my first smoke and my first drink, as I said in the podcast about my experience with smoking. As with alcohol, I remember it completely. It was back in 2008 at a graduation party. And at this point, I had never really experienced alcohol outside of my dad's drinking and going with him. And I probably could have drank way before this point, but at the time I was 17, and oddly enough, it never even really crossed my mind to drink. I had gone over to this friend's graduation party, and there just happened to be alcohol, and I was staying the night. And it essentially all rolled into that. And even after this point, I did not drink again until after I entered the Army and after I completed basic training. I went out with a bunch of Army friends that I went to basic with, and we got a hotel room and had a lot of drinks and everything and partied. So it was probably a solid 6 months in between drinks at this point, if I remember correctly. And honestly, like during high school and everything, I was more worried about video games and the few friends that I had and drinking or partying. And the two friends that I'm still friends with today never really partied. My buddy Casey, he's not a big drinker. He'll buy drinks and sometimes get drunk, but honestly, he doesn't drink all that much. And my other buddy Roy never really drank until he was in his late 20s. And even now, he really still doesn't drink either. So my friend group, honestly, is probably what kept me in line all them years. Otherwise, I might have gone down a far different path, to be honest. And even when I look at my family history, there was so much drinking in my family. My great grandma Pauline drank, my grandpa drank their entire lives. My dad still drinks and parties pretty hard, and most of his friends are still pretty heavy drinkers outside of the ones that have been forced to stop due to legal problems or health issues. And so I've just been around alcohol honestly my entire life, and I'm not using that as an excuse at all. It's nothing like that. I don't blame any of them at all for my drinking. I am an adult and did what I did on my own accord. But it's crazy to see how they drank and partied so much, and I have my entire life drank pretty hard, but my sisters are a little bit different. My middle sister, she doesn't really drink or party. She will every once in a while get pretty hammered and party pretty hard, but she tends to drink far less often. And my youngest sister, she doesn't drink at all. She'll try drinks if we have them and bring them out and everything, but she does not drink outside of that at all. And it's really odd to see. We all grew up and we're all within 6 years of each other, I think. I'm really bad with ages and birthdays, but it's just crazy to see the difference between them and me and how we all grew up and experienced the same things. I mean, they didn't even really drink until after I left for the Army, and they were in their late teens by that time, 15 or so. But that was their first real experience with it, and they really didn't drink for a while after that either. But in the future, I'll be going over all of my different experiences. I know, like I said, my first drink was at a graduation party. There was not a whole lot about that. It was a couple friends. It was pretty small. His parents had a nice lake house, and they just made sure that no one did anything stupid. It was not really a huge kegger. It was just kind of a couple of people from high school hanging out and not doing anything too stupid. But there's so much in the rest of my life that I can really go over, honestly, that's related so heavily to alcohol. My first sexual experience, I was super drunk, and just honestly, that's where my addiction had started. A little bit before that, a year before that. And kind of treated her terribly, and definitely regret that heavily. My entire Army enlistment, I drank pretty heavily, but most of the people around me did as well. I fell out of a truck while I was 2-tracking at one point. Most of my exes were pretty heavy alcoholics, especially my first one, who was later addicted to meth and stuff. My ex after that left me for my sister's boyfriend, actually. And then some of my exes later on drank, but not as heavily. Honestly, if anything, I was the one who was out of control at that point and did not treat really any of them the way I wish I would have, because there are some that I do sincerely miss, and alcohol definitely did not help with any of that. And back to my military experience, there was one point where we got alcohol over in Iraq, so we ended up playing slaps after we got drunk, after we got back from Iraq. We did Hennessy with beer chasers, which is still turns my stomach to this point. And another time, I had gotten so drunk I threw up on a supervisor who she liked me, and so that was super embarrassing and just absolutely regrettable because she was an amazing person, and we really didn't talk after that. And there was like a deer hunting incident where two guys said, "Hey, let's go hunting." And we had been doing shots of tequila, and that sounded like a reasonable idea, even though if you're listening, I'm sure you just shook your head right now. And they didn't mean in like a stand or a blind, they meant in a truck. And so we were driving like through cornfields and ended up getting arrested that night. And that was my first real experience with law enforcement, and I should have learned back then and quit drinking, honestly. But once I got out of the military, I still drank pretty heavily, probably more so because I realized that I'd become like an alcoholic and that my entire enlistment was kind of wasted, but more so that I came back to become an alcoholic. And there are so many people that like passed away during their service that were probably better people than me, like fathers and mothers and parents and siblings who treated their family probably far better than I did. So I was extremely resentful of myself, especially like when I was working in law enforcement as a corrections officer. And during that time, I'd actually get my DUI and just absolutely hated myself when I was going through that. I had to take out like addiction counseling, and he asked me like what I thought about myself, and I just said that I hated myself. I legitimately did. I resented everything about me. My military career didn't go the way I wanted. Law enforcement didn't go the way I wanted. I was just essentially drinking as like a means to get rid of everything, but without actually having to take that step on my own. It was kind of a way to slide downhill without having to force my own hand, if that really makes sense. But during that time, like shortly before the DUI, I had reconnected with like a friend. She was somebody I had a huge crush on when I first like got out of the military. And then we reconnected. She had been an addict, and then just one thing led to another, and we did end up having a kid, but she ended up taking off to Florida, and shortly thereafter I got my DUI, so I couldn't really leave the state to even see the baby. And then she ended up drunkenly and on so many different drugs, smothering the baby in its sleep. So I never even did get to meet her. And honestly, I have alcohol to thank for all of that. I mean, I don't even know if I really can say that because I can't blame an inanimate object. Alcohol didn't force itself up down my throat. I am an adult. I decided to drink. Thankfully, the last few years I've been like slowing way down and just trying to get, even like the last time I drank with my dad, I just don't see a point in drinking anymore. I don't really enjoy it. And while it makes me more sociable, it just never ends well. I feel like garbage the next day. I'm always super sore and just hate everything about it, to be honest. And I don't understand like why I drank for so long. And honestly, I'm hoping this podcast will help me go through some of these memories. And once I explain all this stuff out and do different episodes on them, maybe that will help push me into actually getting rid of alcohol for good finally, and pushing it away and not being that person who drinks all the time and puts drinking before other people and other responsibilities. But I do want to thank you so much for listening. I have many listeners yet, but if you are listening, please like, subscribe. You can email me at letsexaminedictionhonestly@gmail.com or the Leah podcast at gmail.com with any feedback, ideas, stories. If you want to come on here and talk about your experiences and everything you've gone through, please do. And just know you're not alone. Everything you're going through, somebody else has gone through. Anything you've done, I would say, is not the end of the world. You always have more that you can achieve. And please remember, as Alan Watts said, you are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.